Alrighty guys, so today we are going to be working on the basing video for the next kit. So you can see, ooh, if we get the focus on, and there we are. I have this strange turtle looking mass that we're going to turn into a tree stump to attach our fairy onto. You can see I've started her paint job as well. But so in the middle, this was just green stuff that I knew I was going to need to be a little bit more precise with. So it's more cured, and then I just mixed up the second batch for all of the little tendrils and everything like that on the base, right? Not the tendrils, but the roots. But either way, the color difference isn't going to make a difference for me. I just have more green and blue mixed in with, each other. This obviously has more yellow. This has more blue. Doesn't make any difference, so don't worry about that part. Now, it does have physical different properties, but it's not going to make a huge difference for what we are trying to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of create like a lip around where the stump is actually existing here. So I'm going to start creating this structure, and then you can see I'm going to start pulling up the sides where I have my roots that begin. That way I just sort of hide the seam line from where I attached them. So that's pretty cool. Now then, I'm going to kind of squish everything and warp it a little bit just to give it a bit of a difference of shape, like so. Then, you guys know I don't use like real sculpting tools, which I have. I just don't use them. I don't know why. I'm just weird. But now I'm going to go and start reshaping some of our roots and everything like that. So really all I'm focusing on here is giving them a believable shape. Which shouldn't be too hard. On the tree itself, I'm just kind of pushing up. And then on the roots, I'm just kind of reshaping them like this to give them a little bit more of a believable root shape. So I'm going to keep doing that as we move around the base. And I'll probably go back in and add more of the texture sort of powder paste that I do. The one that I used this time around was PVA glue, sand, and the baking soda. So it's a varied texture, as you can see, but I'll probably do it to blend in our work here a little bit more. I was playing around with the idea of having some of the roots travel off of the miniature, like this, or off of the base, I should say. I think that's kind of a fun idea to do that. But reshaping them, adding little dents, divots, doing the same thing here. Now I'm going to go much more intense with a different tool, most likely the end of the hobby knife blade, like I always end up doing somehow. And I'm just getting the end of this wet, so that way everything moves around nicely and behaves in a way that we would expect it to. See, I feel like this one should be a little bit more twisted as it enters back into the ground. And like I said too, I'm not an award-winning sculptor by any means. I mean, I suck. That's at the end of the day. I'm not great at it. But I feel like anybody can do green stuff work to a believable extent, as long as you give it a try. It's really, I mean, mastering it is very difficult. Making things that are believable, not too hard, especially if you're going to be painting them. And you can do natural stuff like wood, etc., etc. I feel like that's not really going to be too much of an issue. I'm actually going to pull that off because it didn't have any volume to it. It doesn't make sense. And then we got the big one here. Now this big guy, I feel like we're kind of stuck with where it's at. Now anywhere that I have kind of this, like, you see how it's leaving some of the shape stuck to the texture beneath it. That's where I would go back and reapply the texture, the earthen texture, because that obviously is going to look a little odd if I just leave it like that. Okay, so now we're ready to have a little bit more fun. First thing I'm going to do is start flattening the top here. I'm just using the side of my hobby knife to smash it down. And I've let this green stuff in the middle, the lighter green stuff, it's been active for, geez, man, probably like 30 or 40 minutes at this point. So it's not like crazy malleable, but I'll be able to get really crisp lines and stuff out of it if I need to. But what I'm going to be doing now, using the side of this blade, going in and starting kind of our wood grain. Or sorry, I should say the back of the blade. And I am bad at all of this, so again, you know, you will see how good it looks or how bad it looks by the time I'm finished. And if it looks too bad, then that means you're never going to see this video, because I'm going to end up making a totally different base in a totally different video. Maybe, okay, so maybe if it doesn't work out, I'll release this anyway just to show you that I suck, and then that way you'll feel more confident. But that's my goal, is to at least attempt making it look believable in some way. So all I'm doing, though, pulling it up like this on the sides to build in kind of that wood grain texture or bark texture. It's not actually wood grain, it's bark. And then using the actual blade side of my blade here, going back in and messing with our edge to also make it appear more believable. Just kind of adding varied width between some of these marks and lines. I know at ReaperCon, Julie Guthrie, it's either Julie or it's Bob. One of them, I think it's Julie. She does the spooky tree. I believe it's Julie. But I know they're usually both in that class at the same time. Does an awesome class at ReaperCon on making trees and stuff. Obviously, if you can get in a class with her with sculpting, that is a world-class Greenstuff artist right there, or whatever material she uses, but a hand sculptor. Flattening out these little sections that I did, going back with the side of the blade. I just don't want anything to be uniform, but I still want it to look natural. But you can see what I'm building in right there. That's also why I went a little bit high on the edges, like a Colosseum, when I was pinching it to make that crater, because I knew, right, as I'm building in my texture and everything else like that, I would then need to kind of smash things down after I'd built in everything that I was kind of going for. So that's what I'm attempting to do here. As I just kind of cut into these areas. And I can increase that crater by using the back of a brush, which is actually what I'll do right here. So I'm going to get the handle here wet. I'm just going to push it up against where I have all these edges going. You can see what I'm doing pretty easily. And this will help it expand, change its variable width, make it look more natural. Or unnatural, depending on how bad this looks, but either way. I am definitely not the world's most confident green stuffer when it comes to stuff like this. But you guys know, I mean, anytime I talk about green stuff, I always mention, yeah, I can definitely do, like, cleanup work and texturing, but no sculpting. That is not my jam. For sure. But we're going to attempt it today. If anything, this should give you guys more confidence in trying it on your own, since you know I'm hot garbage, and I'm at least trying it. And, too, it's one of those things, like, the end result isn't... Unless you're sculpting something that is just so amazing and visually intriguing to look at, obviously the paint job of the miniature is what's going to really shine anyway. So I'm not, like, hugely freaked out concerned about the quality of this, because I know that probably the fairy that's going to go on top will look pretty sweet. So that is my goal. Go. I'm getting it to where I want it, though. I think that this will look relatively all right. And you can see I've pulled all this extra dumb green stuff on the sides of the base. Once it starts to cure and everything like that, I'll just hit the sides of the base with a sanding twig. I'm going to artificially create a ledge here, or a lip here, by just carving it in. But yeah, that will smooth out any of the weird kind of green stuff that I've got on the edges. Okay. Going back in, reflattening some of these areas, adding more varied line width little border edges. Some of the sections I'm pulling, other areas I'm pushing in terms of flattening it to help vary the shape. You can see we're getting it worked out. And I do want to create a distinction between the area that is bark and then the area that is the inside of the tree. So you can see I'm going in and just shoving the knife in there as I do that. Probably not the best way to achieve what I'm looking for, but I don't know any better, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm using that as an opportunity to make some of the edge of the bark more pronounced, so that way it may pop a little bit more from depending on wherever she ends up standing. But once I have that sort of interior edge, I'm just kind of reshaping some of the bark segments around the stump so that way it just looks cooler. I want them to be segmented. I don't want them to be... I also am not using reference at all, which is probably a bad idea. I probably should have a reference of someone else's sculpted tree stump, but you get the vibe. I just want to see what I can make. I did look at some stuff previously, though, so I'm not, like, totally blind here, detail-wise. But I'm close to totally blind. All right, so I am relatively pleased with that shape currently. So the goal here is to now work our way down the roots in a similar fashion. And I think what my plan is going to be is just kind of brutally do lines like this, while at the same time going back with a softer edge to then kind of reshape the twists and turns on them. And in that way, hopefully all of that combines into a believable root. I don't know. I mean, we're trying our best. I don't think this is what I should be doing here, kind of this webbing, but I believe if I go back afterwards and then smooth it, it will probably look better. Like if I push the back of a brush into that area specifically, it will probably look believable. But I do like this texture I'm getting. I mean, I think we're dealing with something that I can make look like wood at a very basic level. And I'm leaving some parts of the stumps not grainy. You can see me doing that there. How I have sort of these like bigger sections of just kind of clump where it meets the earth. hopefully what we're left with isn't the ugliest tree stump on the planet, but at the same time, what tree stumps are beautiful? I mean, maybe some are. I'm not trying to shame tree stumps over here, but I don't remember the last time I saw a tree stump and I went, wow, nature, aren't you amazing? Yeah, this thing's super ugly, but I think it'll work. All right, then we got to move yet again to another side of our stump. You could use milliput for this, surely. But because of how I wanted to get the... I'm more familiar with how Greenstuff acts when you're using a sharp... I don't know. I felt like this was a better opportunity to use Greenstuff than milliput. Milliput can be kind of weird when it gets wet. I don't need this to be a super smooth form, anything like that. I need it to have texture, so that's kind of why... I in my head, I was like, I don't think milliput's really the direction for us to go here. I'm going to pretend that this is actually a hollow root. So I'm just going to kind of do that a little bit. Okay. Now then, like I said, I'm going to just go in here. That actually removed all of the texture, so that's not what I want, but I do want to sort of add divots and varied weight to the side. So all I'm doing here is literally just pounding in. You probably hear it. Pounding in the brush to help add sort of that varied texture to all the grooves that we've been doing. And then let's see our fairy here. I do think that works. What I'm going to do actually is cut the cloth to be flat with the base edge there. She was at a bit more of a tilted angle previously. So, something like that. Let's back it out. I am happy with that. I will tilt her forward a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so I like that. I'm gonna leave that indent that I made right there. Let me see. You can see the indent where the bottom of that miniature went. But what I'm gonna do is take the knife and just make sure I dig in the outline like that. That way I know this is where it goes. And that way too, if the green stuff sort of like smooths out as it dries, which it can do occasionally. I don't necessarily know the mechanism that makes that happen as the epoxy kind of gets weirder and weirder on you, but I know it does happen. Then I'm just going to take a weird piece of Bones plastic and go in and push in texture in sort of like a ring pattern here. I don't want to do actual rings, so that's why I'm just kind of pushing it around and around. And you know what? I'm going to take this same little texture because it's not an even texture. Oops, sorry. Let me move. Hold on. What's the point if it's not in focus? Sorry, guys. I'm just kind of pushing this in different areas because it's not even. It's sort of odd, varied little marks. Somebody's doing something on Facebook. So now on top of the little ring pattern, I'm taking this and shoving it up against where our bark edge begins. Make that more of a distinction. Relatively round, but not a perfectly uniform shape, which is probably what I'm looking for in general. And there you go. A little bit of a stumpy base. And again, what I need to do, where do I have like, let me see. Because I want to make that a stump edge. We'll go ahead and make that a reality. Going in underneath like so. There we go. Kind of wish these weren't so like, it does look like a turtle. I feel like it's just the coloring, but they're a little bit twisted in an odd way. But anyway, like I said, so now the only thing that I need to do, I'll add like a little tuft of grass and then clean up the edges with the texture basing powder that I already have on there. The rest of the bases, everything like that, I just did the standard powder, glue on a rock, nothing crazy. But I figured I would show, hey, let's attempt doing a stump or something like that. I have the area in which we're gluing the miniature stabbed in there. You can see it. So I know that way whenever she's ready to rock and roll, I can just boop, glue her right there, and we should have an awesome fairy on a stump. So thanks for hanging out. I hope that this works out for you. If you attempt it, I'd love to see it. If you attempt it with milliput, that'd be cool as well, just so we can kind of see you know, what yours ends up looking like. But again, I am not good at Greenstuff sculpting straight up. So this, you know, if you're ever like, oh, my stuff doesn't look as good as his, well, here's your opportunity, because this is as even as a playing field as we can possibly get. So can't wait to see your work. Definitely, I can't wait to see what this turns into when I finish painting it. But beyond that, thanks again. Can't wait to see your work. Take it easy.